we have a special voice joining us at this point. Dr. Bimal Jalan, who's former RBI governor, joins in to throw his perspective to the Greek debt saga. And that saga really puts in the approach the central banks world over are taking to the situation and how perhaps they can best deal with the crisis. And who better to answer or throw more perspective on that issue than Dr. Jalan. It's great to have you on the show, sir. Thanks very much for taking out the time. Give us your sense of the developments that have happened in Greece so far, and what does it mean economically as also geopolitically?
You know, a lot has been written already, as you know. I mean, we have to wait for 3-4 more days to see what the referendum shows or what the ECB decides ultimately. But obviously it's in trouble, and there will be contagion effect in Europe. Of that there is no doubt. Now fortunately, I mean, for the rest of the world, Greece is a small economy. I mean, of course it has repercussions for the banking system, which have international presence and so on and so forth. But by and large, the global impact of the Greek crisis is not supposed to be as intensive as was the case in some other, crisis period, 2008 or that sort of thing. So far as India is concerned, our impact, of course, we have investors in Europe and so on, and what happens in ECB may affect us, but we are not that much linked to Greece economically. And so I feel that obviously it's a global sort of a crisis, and for a country to get into this shape, which it is, and I hope ECB would come out and provide the mechanism for Greece to be bailed out, as it were. And it's not difficult. I mean, it's not a huge sum of money that is required.
Fair point indeed, and a lot of people are already saying that it is not Greece that's in a crisis. It actually has an upper hand. Things are very bad for them, and from here on, it's the Troika that will have to blink. But Dr. Jalan, I have to shift the focus to India, and like you rightly pointed out there, the impact on India is going to be limited. I urge you to expound upon that. What sort of an impact will it really have on India? Is Greece a minor event in our scheme of things, and is China going to be a bigger event as far as India is concerned? The slowdown there, the soft landing that people have been talking about for months now, which is now impending. What sort of an impact do you assess for India, if you can elaborate on that first?
No, but first, my feeling is that this has an impact which is global, because we are part of the global system, global financial system, and so on and so forth. But I doubt, because our reserves are high, our trade deficit is low, we are not dependent on borrowings abroad, and balance of payments is in good shape. So by and large, I believe that we can cope with it without too much of a problem. So far as India is concerned, I mean, I am confident that I hope the crisis doesn't happen and the ECB would come to some defense, but that's a different issue altogether. So far as we are concerned, we are safe, and I don't expect any kind of a problem which would affect us sort of in the macro level for the country as a whole. But obviously those who are investors in Greece, I mean, they would suffer. Those who are investors in Europe, there may be impact because of the banking system. So by and large, taking the Indian overall situation, I think we are not in a difficult zone.
Fair point indeed. We're not in a tough, difficult zone, and which is perhaps we saw the finance secretary, the chief economic advisor, go out there and allay fears yesterday. But experts who are contrarians on this matter believe that India is jumping the gun too early to dismiss the headwinds. I know you're far more optimistic because you believe we have reserves, you believe our balance of payment is rightly balanced, and we will perhaps not fall prey to this crisis. But what would you say to experts who believe we are dismissing the headwinds way too early?
No, but if you don't want to dismiss the headwinds, what would you do? Tell me. I mean, critics may criticize whatever we do and wherever we are, but what will you do if you are not noticing the headwinds and so on? So you have to take a balanced view of where we are and what we can do. And I think that that so far as India is concerned, I mean, I still keep on repeating this point, and I'll repeat it again, is that there may be headwinds, there may be impact, but we can cope with it. That's it.
What's your view on the currency movement? Because this is going to weaken the euro, this is going to strengthen the dollar, this is going to weaken the Indian rupee. Is that where the silver lining lies? Our exports have weakened considerably, and this is perhaps the, the silver lining as far as India's exports is concerned. A weaker rupee as a consequence of what's really happening in Greece.
No, we can manage the rupee also, because as I mentioned earlier, the reserves are high. Our dependence on euro is much less. I mean, it is we have dollar in our reserves, not euro. So, I mean, I don't see that there is something here which poses a high risk, but it can be managed. I mean, I'm not just being optimistic. I feel that we can manage it without too much trouble.
I specifically also want to talk to you about the outflows. Many people believe that the short-term trigger is really Greece, but the long-term trigger for outflows is going to be the US Fed rate hike when it happens, which is either December or January or whenever it does happen. Are you somebody who believes that the outflows are going to be significant and it's not just going to be a small knee-jerk reaction whenever the US Fed rate hike happens?
No, no, obviously there will be a greater push to outflows. I mean, those who have been investing in India because India's interest rates were high and India's foreign exchange rates were stable, I mean, would naturally, I mean, they might withdraw money to take it back to the US. But again, I mean, I'm not just being optimistic, but what I'm saying is that given the India's economic prospects, given the fact that we have excellent investment opportunities, that I don't see that any money which has come into India for investment would be withdrawn, FDI type of money, because of this problem. So my take on this is that yes, I mean, those who have invested in our equity markets, they may withdraw money if our equity markets are not doing as well. Those who have invested in a certain amount of short-term movement, counting on short-term movement or short-term investments in the equity market, they may withdraw because US opportunities have increased. But I mean, I don't, at least as of now, all these issues can be handled.
Dr. Jalan, I want to take this discussion away to the other concern and pressure point as far as India is concerned, and that's China. And many people believe that Greece aside, the bigger worry for India is China. I have a quick question to ask of you. How much of a concern are you reading into China? I mean, every expert worth his salt is talking about China and how this is going to impact the global economy, and the impact may not be fortuitous for us as well.
No, I mean, obviously, I mean, in the sense that, but so far as China is again concerned, you may say that I'm being too optimistic and too positive and so on, that we are, I mean, our dependence on Chinese exports or imports is much less than many other countries. And China is a great exporter and we import from China. Many of our products have inputs from China, so that would continue. I mean, the fact that as far as China is concerned, they would be more interested in increasing their exports and stabilizing their growth may be favorable from the terms of trade point of view, so far as we are concerned, because we import rather than export to China as much as we import. So, I mean, that Chinese situation, yes, it is volatile, it is not as promising as it used to be, but I don't see that they can't handle this problem, the China, and already they have taken some steps, etc., and which would yield some benefits. But supposing if Chinese prices fall, if Chinese currency falls, I mean, it's not bad for us.
So are you here saying that a meltdown in China throws up an area of opportunity for us?
No, don't use the word meltdown. A meltdown means a crisis. If China is in crisis, it would have a very large impact everywhere else. I mean, if China is in crisis, then it has an impact on traders, it has an impact on investors, there will be indirect impact, I mean, through rest of South Asia and so on and so forth. In Asian crisis, we have faced this problem, for example, but we handled it. So it is, what I'm saying essentially is that the Chinese issue as of now, from our point of view, is not very damaging. As long as, and China has this strength, China has one of the highest reserves in the world. China has the ability to cope with this particular problem. So let's not exaggerate it as of now.
Fair point. I have two quick questions to ask of you before I hand it over back to Nikunj and Tanveen. And the question really is on monsoon. Almost a red flag was raised on deficient rainfall, and we've seen a healthy progress of the monsoon happen this time around. How hopeful are you that the crisis as far as monsoon was being talked about has been averted, and this is going to be positive as far as Indian economy is concerned?
Hopefully. I mean, this is a very positive news that monsoon is not as bad as it was forecast to be some weeks ago. So, I mean, on that there is no doubt, and there is nothing much to add to it. I mean, that our food prices, if they are under control, our inflation will remain under control, and that's very, very positive news. But let's wait and see for another fortnight or so.
So on hindsight, do you believe the RBI was perhaps way too hawkish in its commentary, and while it was playing up the fears of a monsoon, stoking inflationary concerns, on hindsight, do you believe the narrative was far too negative?
No, I don't want to comment on the RBI, but that was the, say, fortnight ago or 1 month ago. I mean, all of us thought that the rains would be poor. Am I right? I mean, you must have, your channel and everybody else must have said that the rains would be poor, and that was the meteorological forecast. And now it is better, so it's a good news. And so far as RBI is concerned, when that report was written that you are talking about, financial stability report, I mean, then the monsoon was supposed to be a little worse than what it was desirable to have. So, but now things have changed a bit, and it does happen.
So the reason why I'm asking you this question is because I'm really referring to Dr. Rajan's commentary when he announced that monetary policy move. And I'm quoting your good friend Yashwant Sinha here, because he said policy making cannot happen if you take the worst of every possibility into cognizance. And do you believe RBI made that mistake?
No, I don't. As I told you, I don't comment on the RBI. But I think Mr. Yashwant Sinha, what he said was right. Hello?
You're endorsing his view, but you're not going to mount this yourself. I have a last question before I let you go. I know you do not comment on monetary policy, and you're not going to talk about rate cut. But if the monsoon is on, but all I'm asking you, sir, is if the monsoon is on track and inflation is under control as it is, do you believe there is a case for a rate cut? I'm not asking you whether the RBI should do it or should not, but do you believe there is an elbow room for a rate cut, and how much of an elbow room there is?
There cannot be. You see, it's one of those things where, there cannot be two views on that. I mean, if inflation is under control, if the rains are good, if food prices are not rising, and if there is that we want to boost growth as we should, and the credit growth particularly, then obviously, I mean, there is a need and a justification for having lower rates of interest in our country, because the real interest rates are very high. You just look at the real interest rates, in terms of wholesale prices or even CPI. So yes, I hope that we will have lower interest rate, whichever way, it comes about.
Dr. Jalan, I've managed to get a headline out of you. Thanks very much for joining us as always right here on ET Now. Appreciate your time.
Thank
back
you.
to Nikunj and Tanveen in the studios.
Yeah.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.